This episode and every episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show is brought to you by Ironmonger Brewing. Visit Ironmonger at their taproom in Marietta, Georgia, or online at ironmongerbrewing.com.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yeah, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
And welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios in Marietta, Georgia. And this week we're talking with Sixpoint Brewing. I'm Tim Dennis, and with me as always is my good friend and co-host, Brian Hewitt.
Hey, Tim. Joining us today, we have Max Finnance, the Education and Training Manager for Sixpoint Brewery. We're going to talk about beer education, the Cicerone certification program, expansion plans, and, of course, probably IPAs. Max, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm excited to be here tonight.
Absolutely. We are as well. As you know, we're in Georgia. You guys just reintroduced yourself to the Georgia market here. So it's good to see your beers back down here. We've got a few. Thank you. You did. We've got a few from the brewery there to sample that we're going to get into today. So Max, how's your week been going up there? How's everything in Sixpoint land?
My week's been great. You know, everything's a little bit different these days. We don't have as much freedom and flexibility up here in the Northeast as you guys, I think it seems, have down south.
You're being kind, Max.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's wide open down here, honestly.
Yeah, we're still pretty cooped up here. So
okay, yeah.
Normally my job involves a lot of travel and in-person events and trainings and stuff like that, and I'm doing a lot of stuff remotely via the computer screen. So we're still adapting.
You know, that's something that was tough for me. Is I get almost a little bitter about it. The virtual beer fest and that. I'm like, don't do this to me. Just don't do the festival. Don't give me this
hurts
virtual.
too much.
Yeah, I can't handle
to see beer through a screen and not be able to drink it.
Yeah, it's just and I guess everybody's trying to live in these, as they say, the new normal is the best we can right now.
Yeah.
So everywhere you go, they tell you to put a mask on. I went into a business earlier today, and a guy walked in just in front of me with no mask. And the guy behind the counter got it. Sir, you need to put on a mask. He's like, do you have one? He's like, yeah, he gave it to him. The guy that yelled at him had the mask below his nose, and the lady working the cash register next to him had it hanging off one ear. But they yelled,
rocking the chin diaper.
Yeah,
nice,
but they yelled at this guy for not.
You need your chin diaper.
Yes, wear your chin diaper. So you guys are still fairly locked down there, though, huh?
Yeah, we're starting to see things reopen, but definitely, none of the beer festivals and the big in-person events that, like you said, they're sort of the lifeblood of this industry. And I love getting out there and talking to consumers and getting to vibe with people as they're trying our beers, especially for the first time, and see the look on their face. And
absolutely,
that's one of the things that we're really missing across the board right now, I think.
We went to a preview of a brewery recently. I can say that word. I've said it many times.
Preview of a brewery.
And we saw people we haven't seen in 6-8 months that normally we'd see them at least monthly at a different event here.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh, well, we're making it the best we can.
Back when there were events every week. Can you remember
in the days,
that?
Barely.
Insane.
The days of 2019.
I know.
Right?
So long ago.
Yeah. Brian, how was your week, man?
It was pretty eventful. So, of course, I continued to drink through my cellar. I got into a Weyerbacher Sunday morning stout from 2016. I love that I hoarded so many of those. I really wish that I had drank them more quickly. That one was starting to show some age on it, but I still like it a lot.
It's the chance you take.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And a St. Bernardus Abbott 12 Oak Age from 2019 early, so that's about a year and a half. That's a great beer. Oak doesn't add a lot to it.
I actually think I preferred the non-oaked version, if I'm being honest.
I was on the fence with that. Every now and then that oak would shine through, and I'm like, that's nice. But you know what? The regular is fine. And unfortunately, it's or fortunately, however you think of it, discontinued beer. So I also went out to Stillfire for their first anniversary this past weekend, and also because they won a medal at GABF for the, the Orange Diva, the Blood Orange wit beer. So
I think that was in the experimental category. Does that sound correct?
Was it experimental? I thought it was like a Belgian wit category. I think it was a proper wit category.
If I remember correctly, and obviously I don't, we had 2 breweries that medaled in the experimental and then one in one other category.
You might be right. Maybe I misread it, but they did win. I believe it was bronze for that. So that was cool. It's a good beer. And also they were releasing Glorious Maximus, which is a hazy DIPA. So I enjoyed that. Enjoyed a Nitro Cuban coffee stout, which was very good. So I drank everything there. It was a good time. It was very festive. How about you, Tim?
As I mentioned earlier, we did midweek. We went out and visited a new brewery, actually a new extension of an existing brewery, Three Taverns opened what they call their Imaginarium at a new development in Atlanta. Really cool place, really cool commons area in this. It's called the Atlanta Dairies, where it is. Old dairy, as you may have guessed. But, restaurants, coffee houses, brewery, and Three Taverns, just delicious beers, man. And then they had 24 taps on there. So we got a little try of that. Really cool space, kind of a Illuminati vibe, Illuminati apothecary. Do you think that's an accurate?
I really didn't think about that.
So yeah, I think I nailed it there.
Okay, yeah. I guess you got to go in there looking for the hidden monks,
right?
Yeah, that's one of the things.
I had a good time with that, and then I went over and visited my dad this weekend. My dad's been a little under the weather, so went over and did that. If you have never road tripped through the rural South, you're missing some of America's greatest entertainment.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I went there. But I did make a stop through Chattanooga, stopped at Heaven and Ale, unfortunately left with no goodies there. The location I went to stopped doing to-go beer.
You left with neither heaven nor ale.
Neither one. But in Nashville, I stopped at Southern Grist, and I got a really nice sampler there. We've been sipping on a couple of those pregame, and so had a good time there. Went over to Arkansas. My dad lives in the northeast tip of Arkansas near the Missouri Boot Hill. And there's just nothing there. When I searched for closest brewery, it was Memphis, which was 70 miles away. So, but Brian, what they did have, we've talked about our love of gas station chicken.
Yes.
We got a gas station chicken joint not far from here that's delicious. And I went over, and Brian, amazingly enough, in my dad's little podunk town, they had an outpost of our gas station chicken joint.
Did they?
So I had to check it out. A little different, Brian.
We need to get them as a sponsor, honestly.
We do, man. We do. For instance, and I think I shared a video with you. They sell fried chicken, and I kid you not, hair.
They sell
hair. So you go in, and on one side, they've got the fried chicken counter. You turn around, it's like 6 rows of weave hair. So chicken and weaves is a business model I personally never would have thought of.
I would not have either. But
I'm missing out, man. Do you have that up in New York, Max? Do you have chicken and weaves up there?
I can't say I've ever seen that combination together, but we do have some pretty good gas station chicken, I will say.
See? Yeah, man. I'm telling you. So good stuff. Absolutely.
Well, Tim, I think it's time for the beers of the week.
Now it's time for our Beers of the Week. Brought to you by The Nest, craft beer and barbecue in downtown Kennesaw, Georgia. TheNestKennesaw.com.
Well, Brian, as always, we have a great selection of beers to drink. Once again, I do want to thank The Nest for sponsoring this segment. They've got a great tap list right now, including several from Three Taverns that we mentioned earlier, Brian. They've got 3 different sours on, and they have a couple of IPAs. They said they will not last long, so get out there and get them while they can. They had an event with them recently, so they got a little bit left that you can get up into.
Get while the getting's good.
But you know what we're getting into tonight, Brian? We're going to get into some 6-Point beers, and we're going to start. We like our crispy boys, so we've got 6-Point the Crisp that I can't believe we didn't open it before we got
what are
into
we
this,
even thinking about?
We'll get on that soon. We also have the 6-Point Resin IPA, and we have the Meltdown Northeast DIPA. So those will be great to sip on. And Brian, what's happening this week in the news?
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
All right, so the Great American Beer Festival 2020 results are in, and I have swiped some fun statistics from AmericanCraftBeer.com. Nice of them to put them all bulleted up for me. As you probably already know, it was a virtual event this year for obvious reasons. It was the 34th edition of the GABF competition. 8,806 beers were judged. 1,720 breweries were in the competition from all 50 states plus Washington, D.C., 115 judges from 21 states. The average number of competition beers entered into each category was 97. The category with the highest number of entries, you probably guessed it, Juicy or Hazy India IPA with 377, 272 total medals, 240 medal-winning breweries, 337 first-time GABF entrants, and 19 first-time GABF winners. The brewery with the most medals won was Sun King from Indianapolis with 4 medals, Tim.
I think they usually do fairly well.
I think they do as well. I've seen them come up a few times. So we've got another high-profile casualty of the pandemic. Mikkeller is closing their New York City location at Citi Field in Queens, which is the home of the New York Mets. It opened just 2 years ago, and of course, with nobody attending the games during the 2020 season, it's kind of hard to make a go of it in a ballpark location. Those are expensive. The plan is to consolidate their NYC operations with their San Diego location, and Mikkeller will still be distributing their beers to New York, so people that are fans of theirs will still be able to get their beers. They just won't have a place to go drink them.
That's unfortunate, man. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of folks topple throughout this pandemic. We knew it was coming, man. We knew it was coming. Well, that wraps up this segment of the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break. but we'll be back soon with more from Sixpoint Brewing. You know we love good beer, and Athletic Brewing makes non-alcoholic beer that stands shoulder to shoulder with their boozy brethren. With a fraction of the calories and certified organic, it's a great beer to enjoy anytime.
Athletic's got new brews like Cerveza Atletica just in time for summer. Check out the full selection at athleticbrewing.com. Use code BG25 for 25% off your first order, and U.S. customers get free nationwide shipping. Athletic Brewing, brew without compromise.
Have you ever thought about owning your own brewery but don't know what it takes to get one built? We're Storytime Construction, and we build breweries. We're Georgia's most experienced and hands-on contractors when it comes to building new breweries and tap rooms, or expanding existing breweries. We offer full build-outs, remodeling, and additions, as well as consulting and construction management. Give us a call at 770-733-4343. Storytime Construction. We build breweries.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Remember, all episodes are available on demand, so if you missed the broadcast, get the podcast. Beer Guys Radio is available on all popular and unpopular podcasting apps. Now let's get back to Sixpoint Brewery.
Max, we're going to start with a question that has absolutely nothing at all to do with beer, but we think it's interesting.
I like that.
Yeah. So you served aboard a nuclear sub. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah. I was in the Navy for 5 years right out of high school.
Okay. Did you brew there? Is there a lot that you brought with you to Six time in a nuclear sub?
I was not doing any brewing, but it did help out with my science background. I'll say that.
Sure. Well, that's good.
They do frown on open flame in subs, right?
Yeah. So you'd have to have an electric brewery.
Okay.
That's easy.
Oh, all right. Then fair enough. Fair enough.
That would have been awesome. You know, I had wished that I'd done. No, I don't really. I don't really want to be in the Navy as much as I want to cruise around for like 4 years
or lie about say
and
say
cool
that you
stuff.
were.
So no, I want to go out and cruise the ocean in that. I'd be down.
I worked with a guy that was on a nuclear sub many years ago, and he said he had stories he could not legally talk about, which I thought was fascinating. So
Max, how did you make the jump from a nuclear sub to a craft beer?
It's a little bit of a long story, but I'll give you guys the super condensed version.
Okay, all right.
Basically, I got out of the Navy. I did enjoy it a lot when I was in, but I decided I wanted to do something that was going to make me happy, not just rich when I got out. So I didn't want to work on a nuclear reactor for the rest of my life, because that's basically Homer Simpson's job.
Right, yeah.
So I went to UConn. I went to school and started going to school for pharmacy, but I didn't love that either. You know, the healthcare system in America, that's a whole rabbit hole we don't need to go down.
Yes, yeah.
But I got a degree in biology, and the whole time I was sort of bartending my way through school and just really discovered that I was passionate about craft beer, and not passionate about craft beer in the way that a lot of college kids are with keg stands and beer pong. I did my fair share of those too. But passionate about how it's made, the history, styles, the education side of it. And I started working for another small New York State brewery called Captain Lawrence. Worked for them for a couple of years, just doing part-time events and stuff like that. And then got into the sales side of things with Sixpoint. I did sales for Sixpoint for a couple of years. And then I passed my advanced Cicerone, I guess 3.5 years ago now. And shortly after I did that, they created this new role for me doing education and a quality role as well. So sort of liaising between the sales team, the marketing team, and the brewers, teaching people about beer and talking to people about beer.
That's pretty cool. If you know that a company likes you, if they create a role to kind of capitalize on your talent.
Just to suit you. It's like, we found a role just for you. We created it.
Right. And you're also a BJCP certified judge. Is that right?
I do. Yeah. Obviously, that's another thing that sort of suffered through COVID, but I do love judging home brews and getting out and doing those BJCP events whenever I can.
Which was more challenging, the Cicerone or the BJCP exams?
In some ways, they were both more challenging. It's a difficult thing to talk about because from a technical brewing perspective, the BJCP exams were more challenging than the certified Cicerone level.
Okay.
But once you're talking about the advanced Cicerone and the master Cicerone exams, they're definitely quite a bit more challenging than the BJCP stuff.
That's what I've heard. I am a solid CBS certified beer server.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard when you step up to that, certified Cicerone, that it really does. It's a jump.
It is a jump. And I think all 4 of them are pretty good sized jumps.
Yeah, that'd be, are you going for master?
I sat for the master last year. I did not pass. Otherwise, that would have been in the intro.
Sure.
For sure. Yeah.
You need an 85 to get the master. I got a 79 last year. I was planning to retake it this year. Obviously, it's been pushed off till next year. But yeah, I'm going to resit for it again and hopefully pass it next time.
Okay, very cool. And I saw also that you homebrew. Do you still get a chance to do that much with all your other duties?
I don't do it that much. I'll be honest with you.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
I love that too. And I've got some good buddies that do it more than I do. So I'm happy to spend a Saturday helping them brew. But no, it's been a while since I've brewed a batch on my own.
I'm curious, did you ever enter any of your beers into homebrew competitions? And I guess you're not doing it so much now, so it's not a conflict, but I'm like, as a judge, can you even do that?
Short answer, I have never entered one of my beers in competitions, and I kind of wish that I had.
All right, yeah.
I sort of got involved in judging more heavily after I stopped brewing so heavily, but it's all done judging blind, but the competition organizers know which categories you've entered. So if I entered my beer in a competition, I wouldn't be able to judge that category.
Okay, that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. You might recognize your own beer and say, oh my God, this is a straight up 50 right here.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. And they do exactly the same thing with GABF. I've judged out there a couple of years now. And if Sixpoint enters a beer at GABF, there's no way I'll be assigned to that category.
Okay, that makes it. There's been one time we do, Max, for our Oktoberfest and Christmas, we do blind beer tastings of these beers. And last year we had a brewer on, and their beer was one of the ones in the blind tasting. And they both picked it up. Both of the people from the brewery picked it out, right away. And it was a solid beer. But I see that if you drink enough of your own beer, you should know your own brewer, right?
They picked it out. It was the beer that they liked. I'm like, it obviously did well for them.
Yeah. Brian and I are the same way. We haven't brewed as much either. We brewed a lot before doing the show, and we stay tied up with this now. But, I would enter the competitions because I wanted to get the feedback. The only problem was I only wanted positive feedback. Yeah. Like it's, I wasn't cool with that. Like, you talk to a brewer and they'll tell you, hey, we want all feedback. Tell us everything, but they don't really mean it because I've given some not glowing feedback before and it's never received well. So at least I'm honest about it. I don't know. I only want positive reinforcement here.
I haven't come across many people that are okay with any kind of feedback that isn't positive. Pat me on the back, please. But with all that other nonsense, you can take that right out the door and down the highway.
Out the door.
Yeah.
Get it on out of here. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of professional brewers, it depends on how you can phrase it too. The more technical you can be in your feedback, I find the more receptive they are. But if you just start saying things like, oh, I don't like this, or this isn't very good, then those more subjective types of feedback, I think they're less receptive to.
Yeah. And you know what? That ties back into less like us talking about Untapped. That's so much of what Untapped is. I don't like this. The IPA rating, too hoppy. So
for sure,
like that. It's like, come on, are you serious? Give me something here.
If you can tell a professional brewer that their beer tastes slightly under attenuated, or you wish there was a bit more moderate bitterness, right. I think those are the things they're more open to.
Yeah, they're not always open. Like I told one brewer that his fruited sour didn't have enough sediment. He didn't like that at all. So,
not enough sediment. I am curious though. I know you haven't done much homebrewing in a while. What kind of beers were you homebrewing as a guy who got into judging and critiquing beer at a very serious level? I'm curious what you would have been making yourself.
I was mostly an ale brewing guy. I never had a super fancy setup, for fermentation chamber and lagering long times and low temperatures and that sort of stuff. So I was really just playing around with different hopping profiles. And one of the most enjoyable beers I ever brewed was actually a total accident. I was making a porter. It was a high alcohol beer and I was going to bourbon barrel age it. And then I went away on vacation while it was in fermentation. And I came home and it had this really big banana character that was, of course, unintended, but the temperature must have gotten too high while I was gone. And I sort of just did a 180 on the recipe and turned it into a rum barrel aged Bananas Foster stout.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Could I replicate it? Absolutely not. But that's half of the fun of, beginner level home brewing.
That's what happens when a brewery says limited, one time only. This is it.
We got lightning in a can. So That's great. Make the most of your mistakes if you can. A lot of ours we could not do that with. It was the only thing we could do with it to make the most out of it was pour it down the drain. So, we've
had drain pours, sure, but I guess that's the thing, is knowing when you got to do that.
I think if you haven't dumped a beer down the drain, you probably haven't brewed enough beer, because even professional brewers I know, I mean, you can talk to professional brewers anywhere around the world. If you're not willing to dump your beer, you're probably not in a good spot quality-wise.
Right. And I will tell you what, I know some brewers that have pushed out beer that they've said, this isn't where it needs to be. Let's dry hop it, something like that. I know a couple guys well enough, they'll do it. That doesn't fly, man. People see it. If you don't think it's good enough to put out there, then don't. So
you really shouldn't. Yeah. Speaking of, you were mentioning mistakes that came out well. We had a couple. We had the Accidental Belgian when we were home brewing. We got it was the same situation. It got warm, got a lot of esters, was not meant to be a Belgian. It was a great beer. And the Atlantarctica, that weird hybrid IPA that turned purple, was a cool color. It was, snowpocalypse themed, so it looked like the very end of sunset, during a snowpocalypse. Wonderful, but could not in any way reproduce either of those if we tried. Probably
no, we couldn't. It was a one shot kind of thing there. So we're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back very soon with more from Sixpoint Brewery. Brian and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks, so you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth.
Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you. If you love beer, barbecue, and football, then the Nest in Kennesaw, Georgia is the place to get your fix. Featuring 48 taps, including unique and rare craft beers, wine, and more. Plus some of the best barbecue around. The spacious patio is a great place to catch the games this fall, where you can cheer on your team while you enjoy some wings. And don't forget about the delicious pork and chicken, and my personal favorite, the nachos. Remember, for the best in craft beer and barbecue, make your home at the Nest in Kennesaw, Georgia.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo!
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our great radio affiliates, KFLS 1450 AM in Klamath Falls, Oregon. Catch Beer Guys Radio and KFLS every Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 1 p.m. local time. Now let's get back to Sixpoint Brewery.
Max, we wanted to dive into some beer education with you and talk a little bit more about that. We've talked about your advanced Cicerone, BJCP certification, and I hear you run some classes when you're able to in person, but you're doing them online now. Is that correct?
Yeah, we try and do as much in person as we can, of course. And when I can, I do a lot of travel for work to sort of incorporate that beer education. But really, it's all sorts of levels of stuff. Everything from pretty basic Beer 101 types of trainings for restaurant and bar staff that are good accounts of ours, to more in-depth training for some of our distributor partners. And also, I'll do trainings for our sales teams. We want to have a very educated, well-trained sales team out on the streets representing us. So we focus pretty heavily on that.
That's a really good idea. I hadn't even thought about training salespeople and distributors both. I mean, they don't necessarily know going in. They're just, I'm just going to sell this product.
Sure,
I don't know.
absolutely.
I don't know what I'm doing here.
That's why you go in some places and you see IPAs stacked on the floor in an 80-degree room, So,
or ones that have been on the shelf for 6 months.
Absolutely.
What styles of beer are people most interested in learning about from your classes, would you say?
It's going to sound cliche right now, but I think we're still in a time where the lion's share of the questions are IPA questions. People have a ton of misconceptions about IPAs. Everyone has heard the myth about where IPAs came from. And some people don't know the difference between a West Coast IPA and a New England IPA, and they have questions about all that stuff. And then I would say secondarily, sour beers. So sort of 1 and 1A there.
I could see that. Do you think IPA will always be king? I mean, there's just so much flavor in hops. Whether the variations in styles change a little bit, you think it'll stay at the top of the game there?
I would not put my money against that. I think there's just a whole lot of momentum behind IPAs right now, and I don't see it disappearing, at least anytime soon.
Have you seen any other? So we know we've got the West Coast IPA that we've seen. Of course, the Northeast IPAs and their variations in that. We had the 6-month Life of the Brewed IPA.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Are there any other variations that you're seeing emerge that may be the next great thing in IPA?
So there's a couple of questions rolled into one there.
Okay.
I mean, I think you sort of glossed over, like, we had the East Coast IPA before we had the New England IPA, right? And it was like Harpoon and Long Trail trying to really initiate that. Not sure if it ever really took off. We've got sour IPAs, which are definitely their own thing, and some people are getting pretty excited about. We just made a sour IPA collaboration with our friends over at Victory called Cosmic Handshake. There's some breweries doing really exciting and really good sour IPAs, and I don't know if that's ever going to fully supplant a IPA. I think especially now that we've entered this world of Northeast / New England / hazy, juicy, whatever nomenclature you prefer, the fact that we've developed these IPAs that have a very low bitterness makes them super approachable. And I think that sort of removes the last hurdle in terms of IPAs being an everyday drinker for a lot of people.
Agreed. Yeah.
So since Tim opened the door about this, we've seen that hazy IPAs and New England IPAs, some of us thought they might be like a fly-by-night. They might be a fad. What do you think about something that's come along recently? Is it a fad or is it not? The milkshake IPA.
So I think the milkshake IPA benefits from some of the same things that people love about hazy IPAs and New England IPAs, right? I mean, a milkshake is like the ultimate end of the spectrum in terms of hazy.
Kind of.
Low bitterness. They're flavors that are very approachable. These are flavors that, like, they're beers that tastes a lot like juice or drinks that you could give to your kid. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. Like, these are approachable flavors. The West Coast IPAs of 10, 15, 20 years ago taste like you're eating a grapefruit rind and licking a pine cone. And I love those beers, but I fully understand they're not for everyone.
Yuck.
If you can have a milkshake IPA that tastes like a vanilla milkshake and still slap the label IPA on there, then that's going to appeal to a lot of people. I don't know if they're a flash in the pan, but I think if anything comes down from the government saying we have to label the calories, that's going to scare a lot of people away.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah. You don't know what you're getting into there.
I do think people really, 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 really need to label that there's lactose in a beer. As a guy that has some issues with lactose and ignores those issues and still drinks the beer, I would like to know what I'm getting into so I can prepare myself.
I think a lot of brewers do self-report that.
They do.
And also, if you say it's a milkshake IPA, I kind of think you lactose intolerant folks should take a look at that.
What's interesting is I think that a recent milkshake-y type of IPA that seemed like it would have been
Monday Night did it.
Yes,
and they used vanilla.
There
was no
vanilla,
lactose,
and there was no lactose in it. And I think that they also should brag about there not being any lactose in that.
Yeah. So Max, we talked about what beers people want to know about, but are there any beers that are kind of underappreciated or that you like to talk about more?
Well, it sort of goes back to what we were talking about in the break between segments there. But one thing I really like talking about is lagers. I think there's a whole lot of consumers that don't understand the breadth of the spectrum of lagers. And when they say, I love lagers or I don't like lagers at all, they're talking about one specific type of lager that's made by the really big guys in America, the type of beer that people drink when they're 18, 19, 20, 21, through college doing keg stands. And they don't appreciate the fact that a lager could be everything from a Helles to a Dortmunder to a Baltic Porter. And I like opening people's eyes to that and sort of showing them that just because it's dark in color and high in bitterness or super high in roastiness doesn't mean it's necessarily not a lager.
And that's something I'm going to ask you to put to rest for us here. This is a conversation Brian and I have had.
Oh, no.
Is this an acceptable statement? Pilsners and lagers.
I would say not an acceptable statement because it implies that there's a difference between the two when really Pilsners fall under that lager umbrella.
Right. But you hear people say that a lot.
Yeah, you even hear bartenders say that, and it sort of makes me grind my teeth.
Right. All
So
right. There we
that
go.
one is a category of the other. Tim points that out, looking at me like he's won something. But last week he said that fatal phrase: "Pilsners and lagers," or "lagers and
I
pilsners."
said it sarcastically, though.
Oh,
That's what I did.
no.
We can move on from this now.
Oh, we don't have to move on. We can bask in the glow of this. I will say for them, your basic lager is going to taste a little bit different than, a variety of pilsners.
That doesn't make any sense.
That
doesn't make any sense. We're not going to derail this, but your statement, would you agree that Brian doesn't make any sense, Max?
Well, I think it makes sense in the same way that you would say like IPAs and ales. And you would never hear someone say, I like IPAs and ales.
Right.
That's a fair point. But there are varieties of lager that are just, they are separate.
Of course there's other lagers. Yeah.
Yes, that's what comes to mind for people. Yes.
For sure. Yeah. Like, well, most people, and that's my basic premise there, is that when most people say lager, they're talking about standard American lager.
They are.
Right.
Exactly. And when you go to Pilsner, you're usually thinking about something different and possibly something European.
Yeah.
Yeah. A slightly more elevated experience in some ways.
Indeed.
Exactly. And back to, your point about lagers, there's just so much to experience there. If people would go out and say, that's like people saying, I don't like dark beer, or, I don't like lagers, or I only drink lagers. People who say I only drink lagers don't know the breadth that's out there of that. So
it's a variety of stuff that you can have there.
Sure, absolutely, man.
Schwartz beers.
There is.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Right. Dark beers range from Schwartz beers all the way up to pastry stouts, and that's a whole lot of room in between.
Yeah, that's a big. And I really love a good dark lager. The smoothness that you get from those is just super nice.
That smooth roastiness of it, like a nice coffee, nice big malty notes. It's unparalleled. You can't get anything like it that's not a lager. I mean, and that's why it's a lager, Tim.
Okay. All right. Max, I apologize for derailing this. We were doing so well there. And then we get off and we've ran out of time in this segment. So we'll pick it up and we'll actually try and talk something meaningful here in just a minute. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons get cool perks like Beer Guys swag and commercial-free episodes. Now let's get back to Sixpoint Brewery.
Max, we got a little derailed there in the last segment talking pilsners and lagers and all of that, but we did want to talk to you a little bit about more about beer education here, especially the Cicerone program, because I know that's something that there's a large group of people that are very interested in it, and people love to make fun of it as well and that. So, and I know we've talked already, you're in advanced, you're pursuing your master, but who should go after Cicerone certification? A beer geek, is it something professional? What would people get from that?
So I'm obviously a pretty big fan of the Cicerone program. I think it really depends, though, on what your goals are. And if you're just a beer geek who wants to go out to the bar and know more about beer, and you have no expectations for this, turning into a full-time career and making you want to leave your CPA job, I would say go for it. But at the same time, if you don't have a kegerator at home, if you've never worked in the service industry, there are going to be parts of all of those exams from the first level to the master level that are not going to be tailored to what you need to know. There's stuff about how to change a keg and all aspects of a draft system. So as a casual beer geek, do you need to know that? No, you don't. But I do think it's a lot of valuable education too. And, I love some of the memes that come out making fun of Cicerones. You've got to laugh at that stuff. But I do think that what they've done for the beer world in terms of raising the bar on education across the industry has been really, really helpful to getting consumers a higher quality product at the end of the day.
Yeah, seriously. So what makes a Cicerone different from a beer sommelier, if I said that right?
Well, there is a European organization that has a certification called beer sommelier, but you also see a lot of people title themselves as beer sommeliers without any official designation or certification behind that. The Cicerone is a registered trademark. The Cicerone certification program is a trademarked company. So you can't call yourself a Cicerone if you haven't passed the certified Cicerone exam. Anyone in America could go out and call themselves a beer sommelier without any real repercussions.
Okay, we should start doing that, man.
Honestly, I'm going to add that to my business card tonight.
I know one person that would annoy a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a friend who is actually a beer sommelier that did go through the program in that. So
over in Europe.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
And he's actually, I think his website is the Beer Sommelier. He's been on the show before in that. So, but
what's his name?
I'll tell you later. I'll tell you later.
Yeah. Off the air.
I asked the question because I think I've actually judged with that guy out at GABF before.
I wouldn't
you
doubt
probably
it.
have.
I wouldn't doubt it at all.
Yeah, if I have, he's a nice guy, but I think he's a George guy.
Yeah. Yep.
So, he would be. Yes.
Yeah. Like I said, I've done the CBS. I want to go for the certified and looked at that. But, for someone who maybe doesn't want that education, I think we saw that you have a pretty detailed beer assessment process. Is that correct?
Do you mean as part of the Cicerone stuff or as part of like what we do at work and how we show fans to drink beer in a more thoughtful way?
You know what? I'd say let's go with the fan side of things. I think that's probably more appropriate maybe for people listening, because my point there, Max, was kind of if you don't want to be a Cicerone, but maybe you'd like to learn and appreciate beer a little bit more, what's a tip that you want to use here?
Gotcha. So I can't claim to have this as an original, invention of mine. I sort of stole this 4-step process, or really borrowed it from a guy named Dr. Bill Simpson. He runs the Araxa Corporation, and they're the company that make the actual chemical spikes that Cicerone and other sensory people use in doing flavor testing. And it's just a really good 4-step program where basically you take a drive-by or a quick sniff of the beer. You're swirling it around this whole time, and then you go back for a short sniff, like a 1-second sniff, swirl it around a little bit more and think about what you smelled so far. Take another 2-second sniff, swirl it around a little bit more while you think about what you smelled, and then cover the beer up with your offhand, swirl it around a little bit more, and take another longer sniff, a 2-second sniff. And each one of these steps, you're going to pick up different aromas, different flavor compounds, and then you take a sip of it, and you've sort of built this whole picture over 4 different sniffs plus a sip. You get a really complete picture of what the beer looks like.
I kind of did that while you were talking.
I saw, yeah.
And the individual sniffs work. So for me, depending on how plugged up my nose, but when you hold the hand over it and you swirl the beer around and you really build that up, even the nasally impaired like myself will get a wonderful bouquet. And drinking a beer directly after that is quite rewarding. It's definitely worth doing. I always thought the swirling was something that people did to be pretentious, for a while. So not always. I've become aware.
Out, man.
I've become aware that it does break it out. It's kind of like an improvised slow pour.
It does 2 things. It breaks out those volatile aromatics, so you do get like a more expressive sniff once you finally take that sniff. But the other thing that it does, and this is something that Dr. Simpson really preaches on, is it builds this switch in your brain. So if you just want to go out drinking with your buddies and you don't want it to be an academic experience, don't pick up your beer and start swirling it around. But if you want to get like the full dive into it, then you build the switch in your brain by swirling your cup around, and your brain learns that every time you pick it up and swirl it around, now you're in work mode. So you're smelling for off flavors. You're smelling for different esters and phenols that you might bypass if you were just drinking while you're tailgating. And I think that's really the nuance and the beauty of that swirl.
So being an advanced Cicerone, Max, does it make it better or worse for you?
I think it makes it better because especially at this point now where I've developed that mental switch and I can just go out, if I'm drinking a 12-pack of macro lager with my buddies while we're fishing, I'm
Right.
not in advanced Cicerone mode. But at the same time, if I want to go check out the new brew pub that opened down the street, I can go into work mode and say, what do these guys know? You know, how good is their beer? How good is their quality control? Are they making absolutely beautiful lagers, or is this stuff that, you know, I don't want to be in work mode when I'm drinking?
Sure. Just kick back and enjoy a
Super
drink.
cold, consume very quickly.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Max, let's talk a little bit about Sixpoint Beer and you guys coming back to Georgia here. So did I see that you guys have a tap room under construction right now? Because right now you don't have a tap room at your facility. Is that correct?
So we haven't had a tap room all along, but actually right now, due to some nuances in, you know, being able to use outdoor spaces, we actually do have a courtyard tap room in Brooklyn right now. That's open on Saturdays and Sundays, and people can come down and get beers to go and get, you know, pints while they're there hanging out in our courtyard. We have had a tap room under construction, and well, long story short, it's looking like COVID has thrown a wrench in that plan. Some things have gone wrong with the landlords. We are quickly pivoting and looking at a couple of new locations. I've heard a rumor that we might even get more than one tap room location in New York next year.
All right.
But I don't want to say too much about that, and that's not my hat to pull the rabbit out of yet.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, coming back to Georgia here, you've got, we're enjoying a few of your beers here. Resin, I think, is one, you know, most people who know your brand. The Crisp, Meltdown, I really enjoyed that. See, I'm much more about a Northeast dip in that. The Resin, I can appreciate that it's a really good beer, but not my cup of tea. Just not my profile, you know. So.
It's in my court. That's what I'm talking about right there. Yeah. I loved it when it was here 5 or so years ago. I love to see it back. And I remember these are, what were they, nano kegs? Is that what they were originally calling the skinny 12-ounce cans?
Yeah, we love that nano keg phrase for the 12-ounce cans because it really highlights how good a can is as a storage unit. You know, you can't light struck a beer in a can. It's just so great for the beer in terms of quality.
I can't disagree
Good
with
stuff.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else, what should we see down here in Georgia? What'd you send our way?
So we've got the Crisp, we've got the Resin, we've got the Meltdown, we have Hootie, and we have Trail Haze also there. Two other, Hootie is a hazy pale ale, and Trail Haze is an adventure IPA that we've actually done in collaboration with REI Co-op. And
that's the adventure part of it. I'm like, where's the adventure work into that?
Yeah, you know, it's in that better for you segment, a little bit lower alcohol, a little bit lower calories, and it's designed to be something that you can take up on the mountain, you can take out kayaking, and we're also donating a portion of all the proceeds from that beer to the Leave No Trace charity, which, you know, is all about leaving the outdoors better than you find them. So we're excited about that.
That's good. Take care of the places out there, man. Keep
For
them
sure.
looking good.
Do you still make resin with 10 different hops? I've heard that it's like a ridiculous number of hops, and if so, why?
There are a ton of hops in resin. The reason goes back to the fact that it was one of our founder, Shane Welch's original recipes. And when you're a home brewer, it doesn't really matter if you throw, you know, a pinch of 10 different things in there. He was not writing these recipes to be commercially practical, I'll say. And he found that, you know, if a pinch of Citra makes a better beer, then we're going to add a pinch of Citra. And so that's the way we've done it.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that there, huh?
Absolutely.
Totally.
Well, you know, we're running short on time. If people want to keep up with what's happening with Sixpoint, where should they go?
You can find us online, sixpoint.com. Our Instagram is great, @Sixpoint. Yeah, those are the two that I would recommend in terms of your fastest feedback. We're also on Facebook, but Instagram gets the most attention in terms of most of our consumers.
Good stuff. Max, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having us. We're really happy.
Absolutely. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Join us next week as our friends from Nappy Roots join us back in the studio to talk about their new brewery, Atlantucky Brewing.
Ooh.
They're also going to bring along some of their friends from Leaders of the Brew School, and we'll talk diversity in craft beer. For more craft beer info, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are Beer Guys Radio. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers.